Dune Awakening is an open-world MMO which features the use of third-person action combat and 3 different abilities. Now, another game I play a lot of and make content about here on the channel is also an open-world MMO and features third-person action combat with the use of 3 different abilities. It's called New World. Now, up until recently, I have played a lot of New World and none of Dune Awakening, but that changed. The developers of Dune Awakening, Funcom, invited me to try out their game for a week with a special preview build which featured about the first 25 hours worth of content of Dune Awakening. And in today's video, we're going to go through and talk about the similarities and differences between Dune Awakening and New World. If, like me, you're looking for something to play while you're a little bit bored and waiting for content on your favorite game, is Dune Awakening any good? Well, let's talk about it, shall we? As it is in New World and many other games, one of the things you'll need to do first before playing is create your character with Dune Awakening's character creator. Now, this is actually publicly available. You can already download and try out the character creator on Steam. My opinion, it's pretty solid. It's definitely better than New World's. Then again, most character creators are. New World's character creator is just pretty lacking. There's not really much you can do. There's a few presets and a few hairstyles. Dune Awakening, I did find to be lacking in hairstyles as well, but everything else, there was a huge amount of customization. Character creator is never something I really spend a lot of time with, but in this screen, you also do choose your starting class, but it's, again, kind of like it is in New World Aeternum, where you have an archetype, but you can kind of change everything later on. So you get to choose from Bene Gesserit, Mentat, Trooper, or Swordmaster, and they all have their, like, a Bene Gesserit is sort of a mage kind of playstyle, if you can call it that. The Swordmaster, obviously with the sword, the Troopers with the gun, and then the Mentat is kind of like an engineer almost, but you also have assassin tools as well. They all make sense within the Dune universe, but you can choose class or abilities from other classes later on. You just do a few quests and then you can unlock them. So the class that you choose and the choices that you make here aren't really permanent because, again, you can sort of choose other classes' abilities and mix and match them later on, just like you can with New World. Dune Awakening also gives you the option to have a character backstory, so you can choose which planet you come from and whether you're a peasant or a noble or somewhere in between. These give a few extra dialogue options, but as far as I can tell, they don't really have any big impact on gameplay. Now, a big topic for this video, and about Dune Awakening in general, is the combat. As we covered during the beginning of the video, Dune Awakening, like New World, does feature third-person action combat. It has a stamina bar you can dodge, and it also has 3 different abilities. You start off with 2 abilities, and you'll unlock a 3rd ability after doing some of the main storyline. However, a difference with Dune Awakening compared to New World is the abilities do not tie in with your weapons. So whatever weapons you use, the abilities are separate, and you can mix and match abilities from different classes. So I started out as a Bene Gesserit, but later on down the line, once I unlocked some Trooper abilities, I started mixing those in. So I had some Bene Gesserit abilities and some Trooper abilities like the grenade as well. Now, personally, I did find the weapon choice specifically to be a bit bland and a little bit limited in Dune. From what I got the chance to experience, there were 4 different types of gun. There was a pistol, an SMG, an assault rifle, and a shotgun or scattergun. And for melee weapons, there was the choice of the knife or the sword. Now, looking at the research tree, it does seem as though there will be some more weapons you unlock later on. Again, this preview build didn't have everything available, so I took a look at the research tree. There's some sniper rifles, miniguns, and rocket launchers. But during the preview, there was no opportunity to test these out, so how fun they are, I can't really say. Obviously, the game is set in the Dune universe, so the use of magical weapons, like a fire staff or an ice gauntlet, as we see in New World, that doesn't really exist in this universe. And the closest you can get to magic is probably the voice and the Bene Gesserit abilities. Both games do utilize stamina, which is consumed when dodging and blocking, and specifically in Dune, stamina is also used to cast abilities, so it kind of doubles up as a mana pool. Any ability you want to use in Dune Awakening will also use your stamina. Another feature of stamina is for climbing and parkour, so this is one feature that I actually really like in Dune, is you can climb pretty much anything you can see, By holding onto the jump button as you approach a wall or a vertical surface, your character will start climbing it. This will use stamina, but yeah, you can jump, you can climb anything. The amount of verticality in the game is very impressive, and it does help a lot with exploration and plays into combat to some degree as well. Another feature that is unique to Dune's combat, at least compared to New World, is the use of shields. Shields can be used to prevent incoming projectile damage, so if somebody's shooting at you, the shield will block it, making them very effective against ranged weapons, obviously, but they are weak to melee weapons. A melee weapon, especially with a heavy attack, will be able to break through the shield, and also when you're firing a ranged weapon of your own, that will also drop the shield as well. I believe this is to do with the lore of the Dune universe, but it also works as a pretty good balance point. If you want to shoot somebody else, you do have to drop your shields to do so. If you want to play a melee playstyle, then you can run at people with ranged weapons while they're shooting at you, and obviously the shield will protect you. I do think there are certain weapons, they're called disruptors, like the SMG, that are better at dealing with shields, and there's going to be like abilities and passives that you can do for more shield damage. But in general, the dynamic of the shield gameplay, it added sort of a element of rock, paper, scissors between ranged and melee, and people with shields and people without shields, and whether you want to drop your shield to fire or if you want to hold out and wait for the enemy to fire first. It was actually pretty cool, and the balance and the way that would play around, I do think is pretty interesting with combat. The shield meter would be separate from your stamina. It would use your power reserves, and there were a few other things in the game, like these sort of hover or suspensor, these things that allow you to hover in the air or slow your fall. They would also use power as well. So you could use multiple pieces of equipment like the shield and like the suspensor that would make you like a floating semi-invulnerable god, but obviously it would drain your power, and eventually people would just be able to shoot you at the air, or you would fall to the ground and die. Now overall, comparing New World's combat system to Dune Awakening, I would say that I still prefer New World's more. I think it's more because I am just a fantasy enjoyer as opposed to sci-fi. A lot of Dune's combat is around the gunplay, you know, it's shooting other people, it's pew pew pew, it's shields. The swords and the daggers were cool, but as I say, there was a pretty limited options for what we could do in terms of weapons. I think as they add more, and perhaps as I get into the end game, the combat might open up a bit more with some more abilities and playing around with that. But yeah, for me, as a fantasy enjoyer, I like the customization. It feels like more of an RPG versus more of a third or first person shooter. However, the movement and exploration in Dune does definitely beat out New World. Like using the grappling hook and then climbing up the mountain and then using the suspensor belt to float and then grappling again. It is a lot of fun moving around the world in Dune Awakening, and hands down the points go to exploration and movement in Dune, but overall combat, for me, I don't think they really compare. They are quite different. As it is with combat, character progression in Dune Awakening and New World share some similarities, but are also quite different due to the genre of each game. Dune Awakening is more of a survival, New World is more of a traditional RPG. Both of them do feature tiers of gathering materials. So in New World we have our iron, then we have star metal and orichalcum. In Dune Awakening you have copper, you have iron, you have carbon. As you move into the higher level zones in Dune Awakening, you'll find the higher tier materials, but you will also need a higher tier cut array, which is basically a pickaxe, in order to mine the stuff. There is experience gain and character levels in both games. Levels in Dune will give you skill points to spend on abilities and passives from the skill trees, along with intel, which is used to unlock items from the research tree, which allows you to craft better gear and higher tier crafting stations. As it is in New World, experience is gained from killing enemies and completing quests. One of the big differences between the two games is that progression in Dune is mainly made via the research panel. Building a base, crafting gear, and adding stations to your base is pretty much a necessity to progress in the game. Occasionally, you'll be able to loot weapons and armor from chests, but gaining access to a sandbike, which is something you'll definitely need if you want to move through the desert, that is only going to be obtained through crafting, and again, the crafting is only going to be unlocked by getting the research intel. So there is this sort of direct feed in where as you level up, you need to research things, and then as you research things, you make the crafting station for them. The station allows you to make the thing, which then allows you to get into the next zone, which then allows you to get more experience. You guys get the idea, the cycle continues. Now from what I can tell, there is no level restriction when it comes to gear in Dune Awakening. So in theory, a higher level player could craft and trade gear to someone who is much lower level than them. Items do take damage over time though, and cannot be repaired unless you have researched said item. So the high level player would eventually need to like repair or craft new items for their lower level friend until they unlock the appropriate research. It is worth mentioning that there is a level cap in Dune Awakening. It's currently set to level 200. Now, to give some perspective to this, I've played about 25 hours and I just hit level 52. I do think there is like more experience is required to hit subsequent levels, so getting to level 50, it's probably going to take much longer to get to level 100, but I did find the leveling to be pretty fast and the progression to be pretty quick. It's worth mentioning as well, all of my progression that I made was solo. I spent all of my time playing Dune Awakening solo, and it did seem to be very solo friendly. So for those of you worried, are you going to be able to make good progress if you're playing on your own? My experience so far is yes. Although again, a lot of it is related to crafting. If you're somebody who just wants to go in and pew pew and PvP, I do think there is a heavy emphasis on crafting in this game in order to see character progression. Now diving a little bit deeper into crafting, unlike in New World, crafting in Dune does not have levels associated with it. So your proficiency or ability to craft simply relies on you having the item researched and then having the appropriate materials to make said item. There are special schematics you can find around the world, these sort of purple epic schematics, which when you learn them will allow you to one-time craft special named items. So once you've crafted it, you then have to find another schematic to be able to craft another version of that item. Now, to my understanding, most of the items you can craft in the game can be traded, but during the preview event, we didn't have access to the trading post, so I can't like officially confirm this, but my understanding is you can indeed craft and trade most of the items you do craft in this game. It's also worth mentioning that Dune doesn't have a perfect craft system or gear score or anything like that. So the amount of something that you make is the amount you get. You don't get any bonus refined ingots or anything like that. And the outcome of the craft will be the same every time. So there's no element of RNG where you can make a higher or lower gear score or get some better or worse perks on an item. The crafting is pretty straightforward. There isn't necessarily a system of, acquiring different modifications for your house to craft better items, craft at a higher gear score, or craft more when it comes to refining, etc. When it comes to dungeons in Dune Awakening, the closest thing you get to them are these Imperial testing stations. These are open world constructions that typically contain a lot of NPC enemies, loot, and one or a few boss type enemies, usually before the final loot room. Every testing station I encountered, I was able to clear solo, although undoubtedly, if I had a group of players, we'd probably be able to clear it quite a bit faster. Now, there aren't really tanks or healers in Dune Awakening. I think there are some abilities you unlock later on that can heal your teammates, but taunting the enemy and stuff like that doesn't really exist in the game. So dealing with enemies and bosses in these locations is the same as it would be anywhere else. You just shoot them, you use abilities, and then maybe occasionally you go in for some blade or knife attacks. Now, the size and time it takes to clear out these stations did vary from one to another. Some I was able to clear in about 15 minutes, and the biggest one took me nearly an hour to finish. Overall, I didn't really find these testing stations to be that much of a challenge, and after a few of them, they did get a little bit repetitive. The loot at the end was nice, but the enemy variety was quite limited, and the AI was also usually pretty dumb. Now, it may be that as I progressed more into Dune Awakening's endgame, the challenge of these testing stations, these dungeons, would ramp up. This is usually the case in PvE for most MMOs. But yeah, to recap, dungeons in Dune Awakening, open world, I believe the loot is shared, and there isn't really that tank damage healer dichotomy. Everybody's just going in there with guns, pew pew, kill the boss, get the loot, and I think the loot respawns every 45 minutes as well. But as I say, it is shared with other people on the server. Quests in Dune Awakening are fairly similar to quests in New World and many other games. You have the main story quest line with some cool cutscenes and instance events. I'm not going to spoil too much of that here. And then you have side quests that you pick up from NPCs and bounty boards, which are located at trading hubs around the map. Most of the quests will have you locate some loot, kill an NPC, explore an area, or deliver an item. Now, the quests associated with the main storyline are definitely more cinematic. Some had cool elements of stealth and jumping puzzles. And as I completed them, I was able to unlock more stuff for my character, like the use of a third ability and the ability to use Spice. Side quests in Dune also facilitate the ability to unlock other classes' skill trees via talking to trainer NPCs and then completing their specific quest. For example, I was able to unlock the Trooper skill tree by finishing the quest from this NPC you see on the screen here. He wanted me to go out and kill a bunch of named enemies across the map and then report back. After I did so, he gave me the Trooper skill tree. There are markers on the map which give you an idea of where to go, and overall, I'd say my questing experience in Dune was pretty good, but it wasn't really anything particularly special or out of the ordinary. The thing that shined the most would be the main story quest line with the cool cinematics, although again, I don't want to spoil too much, and just the open world exploration that was involved with these quests. Sadly, when it comes to PvP and Endgame in Dune Awakening, I don't really have much to report on for this video. The reason being, the preview only allowed us to play the first 3 zones. Anything past that, there was literally a giant sort of force field barrier preventing us from progressing further in the game. And the early game, there are very few PvP possibilities. I think the one chance that you do have for PvP in the early or mid game is at shipwrecks, but every time I went to a shipwreck, I couldn't find any of the players to try the PvP, so I didn't get to experience it. But the good news is, for those of you who are PvP enjoyers, a significant portion of Dune Awakening's endgame consists of the Deep Desert. My understanding is this is like a giant, huge extraction zone where you can find powerful endgame items and resources, and it is PvP always on in this area, and it's wiped every week. Now, to my understanding, if you die in this zone or if another player kills you, you will only drop your gathered resources and currency, so not your weapons and gear, but full loot PvP can be enabled via a weekly event called the Landsrad. In this event, players and factions compete to complete objectives and quests. Whichever group participates the most in this gets to set a special set of rules for that week on the server, such as the full loot PvP in the Deep Desert. Now, it goes without saying, the end game in Dune Awakening will be massively important for the population of the game and its continued success. These days, New World Aeternum sadly sees an average concurrent player count of about 6,000 players, and my belief is, bugs aside, this is largely due to a lack of variety and content when it comes to endgame in New World. The early game and the combat and the leveling is very enjoyable, but as players move towards the endgame and reach max level, it seems as though most quit due to the game not holding their interest. Now, whether Dune Awakening is going to encounter the same problems, or its endgame will be sufficient enough to hold the player's interest, only time will tell. Once I learn more and get to experience Dune Awakening's endgame, I will release a separate video talking specifically about it, and if you're interested in seeing that video, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can see when that video comes out. The final topic I wanted to cover in this video is the monetization of Dune Awakening. Thankfully, we are ending with a positive here, as like in New World, Dune will be using a buy-to-play system, so no subscription or reoccurring fees are required to keep playing the game. On top of this, the developers have also announced that there will be no in-game store or microtransactions. Again, I'm going to play the clip here for reference so you can see what I'm talking about.
What about the monetization? How are you selling the game?
Oh, I'm very proud of this one. This is fine. It's a $50 purchase for the game, and then it's going to be DLCs. We have a season pass, but there'll be DLCs approximately every 3 months. And then at some point in the future, we'll probably add an expansion, and then you pay for that. There's no in-game store, there's no battle pass, there's no ongoing monetization in the game, there's no microtransactions at all. That's it. That's what we're trying to do. We believe that the gaming industry's pendulum has swung one way, and maybe it's swinging back.
So there will be DLC and potentially a paid expansion down the line, but generally this is a pretty big shift from what feels like the norm in gaming. And so far, the monetization sounds even better than what it is in the likes of New World, which I've often considered to be one of the stronger aspects of the game. You know, you'd say what you like about New World, but I've always felt it's fairly monetized. You know, you buy the game, that's it, you own the game. That they do have skins in the store, but Dune Awakening isn't even going to go that far. No in-game store. is pretty unusual. Now, as it is with the Endgame and the PvP, this is likely a topic we'll have to revisit at a later date and check in to see if the mentality from the developers still holds true, or if the monetization is added to the game, will be added to the game, even if it's just a form of a cosmetic shop or something like that. It's just something we're going to have to keep an eye on. But initially, the monetization looking pretty promising. For those of you who are interested, the game is coming out on PC first. They are doing a early access thing, so you can buy in and play it 5 days early. The full release of the game is going to be on June 10th, but you can play June 5th with the early access. Xbox and PS5 will be happening, but they've just said it's going to be at a later date. And again, I believe the price tag is somewhere in the region of $50 to $60. So you could probably, the clip confirmed it, but yeah, I think it's 50. I think that's the number that he says. And friends, I think that covers all of the major topics I wanted to initially cover with Dune Awakening. As you can tell, probably so far, New World and Dune Awakening are pretty different games. So if you enjoy New World, you might not necessarily enjoy Dune. But I do think that, like with New World, bugs and content are going to be the main issues that could potentially hold this game back. So if the developers can get on top of these, Dune Awakening will likely be a pretty awesome game. And at the very least, one to play whilst you're waiting for some actual content to arrive in New World Aeternum. If you want to see more of Dune Awakening, I am going to be live streaming some on my channel this coming Friday, 25th of April at 5 p.m. Central European Time. If you're interested in that, links to my Twitch in the description down below. And as I mentioned earlier, once I learn more about the game, and specifically about the end game, the Deep Desert PvP, I'll be uploading a video specifically talking about those subjects here on this channel. So, as always friends, subscribe for more, and I'll catch you guys all in the next video.